Hey there, sci-fi lovers. Welcome to our channel, where the universe unfolds and the impossible becomes real. If you're as passionate about the unknown as we are, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Your support helps us create more mind-bending adventures just for you.
The ultimate drink a SciFi HFY saw. The Galactic Tavern thrummed with its usual life, a mixture of voices rising and falling, blending into the low hum of the station's engines. It was a patchwork of worlds here, human traders, Drexian smugglers, diplomats from the Outer Rim, all converging in the half-lit warmth of the bar. Rich Covert, the man who ran the place, leaned against the counter, absently wiping a glass. His eyes moved lazily over the patrons, cataloging the familiar faces, the usual rituals. He knew them all, at least in passing. The Drexians in the corner huddled around their drinks, muttering in their throaty language, probably negotiating some under-the-table deal. They were an odd group, the Drexians, pragmatic and fierce, but known for their surprising loyalty once you'd earned it. Not that Rich had ever gotten close to any of them, their kind kept to themselves. The diplomats were more subdued, discussing their interstellar treaties, but there was a weariness to their conversation tonight. It was the usual lot, senators and envoys, their political ambitions visible in every flicker of their eyes. Rich had overheard enough diplomatic small talk over the years to understand they were only killing time here, biding their hours in the tavern until the next round of negotiations or conferences aboard the nearby space station. Then there were the traders. Loud, brash, and always the liveliest group, they swapped stories and tall tales, boasting of the deals they'd struck or the dangers they'd faced in the far reaches of the galaxy. A group of them sat near the bar, their laughter booming as they recounted near misses with cosmic storms and pirate raids. A few, tipsy from the house ale, had begun slurring their words, but it was all in good fun. Rich had seen it all before, a kind of wild camaraderie that only seemed to surface when alcohol loosened the edges of the galaxy's roughest travelers. The clock on the wall blinked the hour. Closing time was nearing. Rich sighed. It had been a long shift, and he was looking forward to a few quiet moments with a drink before heading to his quarters. The station could be an unforgiving place, filled with long nights and longer silences. The Galactic Tavern, at least, brought color and sound to his otherwise routine existence. Yet, as much as he thrived on it, the noise and chaos were exhausting. The door to the tavern slid open with a soft hiss, and the room went still. A figure entered, taller than any being Rich had ever seen. It was humanoid in form, but its body shimmered as though it was made of light, not flesh. The air around it seemed to hum, vibrating with a subtle energy that made the hairs on the back of Rich's neck stand on end. The room's usual noise died instantly. Conversations halted mid-sentence, glasses hovered in mid-air, and all eyes turned to the strange newcomer. Rich's hand paused mid-wipe, the cloth still pressed to the glass. He'd seen a lot of strange creatures in his years behind the bar, but this one was something else. The figure moved toward him, its steps soundless, its presence unsettling in a way Rich couldn't quite place. It wasn't just the way the light seemed to bend around the figure, or the way its eyes, glowing with an inner light, seemed to see through everything. It was the way the entire room seemed to hold its breath as the being approached the bar. Rich straightened up, setting the glass down carefully. He'd been in this business long enough to know when something serious was about to happen. Instinctively, he kept his voice steady, despite the odd sensation that had settled over him. "Welcome," he said, the words deliberate. "What can I get you?" The figure didn't sit, didn't lean, didn't do any of the things Rich had come to expect from the thousands of patrons that had passed through his doors. Instead, it stood perfectly still, its glowing eyes fixed on him. "I am not here to drink," it said, its voice reverberating inside Rich's skull. It wasn't like a normal voice. There was no sound to it, not really. It was as if the words were simply placed directly into his mind. I have come to deliver knowledge. The silence in the room deepened. The smuggler at the far end of the bar shifted in his seat, his hand tightening around his glass. One of the diplomats leaned forward slightly, his brow furrowed in confusion. Even the most hardened of the regulars seemed to sense that something was out of the ordinary. Rich blinked. He'd heard all kinds of requests in his time, rare drinks, impossible deals, confessions of guilt and sorrow. But this was new. Knowledge, huh? Rich replied, his tone calm, though his mind raced. Well, you're the first to come in here asking for that. Most folks prefer a stiff drink with their deep thoughts. The figure's head tilted slightly, the light surrounding it pulsing faintly. My kind has no need for such indulgences. We have transcended the need for simple pleasures. I am the last of my people to walk among the stars, offering what remains of us. Rich leaned forward slightly, resting his elbows on the bar. The last of your people? That sounds like a heavy burden to carry. What kind of people are we talking about? We are the Calaris, the figure said, its glowing eyes never leaving Rich's. We have traveled the stars for millennia, seeking the answers to the universe's greatest questions. And now, we have found them. A low murmur rippled through the room. The traders exchanged nervous glances. The diplomats straightened in their seats, their interest piqued. Even the Drexians, typically uninterested in anything that didn't involve credits or cargo, seemed to lean in slightly, their dark eyes fixed on the strange being. Rich raised an eyebrow. All of them? You found all the answers? The Calaris nodded, its form shimmering slightly as if its light pulsed with the acknowledgement. Yes, we discovered the source, the origin of all things. But it is not what you humans would call a god. It is a force, without consciousness, without purpose. It set the universe in motion, and now it watches, indifferent. The smuggler at the end of the bar let out a bitter laugh, breaking the tension that had settled over the room. He slammed his drink down, his voice rough from years of cheap liquor and bad deals. That's it? He growled. That's your big revelation? There's nothing out there that gives a damn about us. What a joke! The Calaris turned its glowing gaze toward the smuggler. Its voice remained calm, even gentle, as it replied, The source does not care because care implies attachment. It has no need for attachment. It simply is. Rich felt a chill crawl up his spine. He'd heard plenty of talk about gods, about higher powers, about forces beyond comprehension, but this was something else. The idea of a force that created everything but cared for nothing, that set the universe in motion and then simply stepped back, gnawed at him in a way he couldn't quite shake. So you're saying there's no point to any of this? Rich asked, his voice quieter now, more serious. No grand plan? No reason for why we're here? The Calaris's light dimmed slightly, as if the question itself carried a weight even it felt. Meaning is a construct of lesser minds. We sought the truth, and now that we have it, we see there is no greater purpose. The universe does not require one. The silence that followed was heavy, oppressive. The usual hum of conversation, the clink of glasses, the low thrum of the engines. It all seemed distant now, as if the very air had grown too thick to carry sound. Even the Drexians, who typically couldn't care less about philosophical debates, seemed unnerved by the Calaris's words. And what do you do now? One of the diplomats asked, his voice tinged with a mix of curiosity and dread. If you found all the answers, what's left for you? The Calaris's gaze shifted to the diplomat. Oh, its form pulsing faintly. Nothing. There is nothing left to seek. No mysteries left to solve. We no longer explore, no longer dream. Our people have become hollow. Rich felt a knot form in his stomach. The way the Calaris spoke, the emptiness in its voice, it was like looking into the abyss. He'd met plenty of travelers who had lost their way, who had been broken by the things they'd seen or done out there in the vastness of space. But this was different. This was a being that had seen everything, known everything, and had come back with nothing. "So why are you here?" Rich asked, his voice steady despite the unease gnawing at him. "If there's no point to any of this, why bother coming here? Why offer this knowledge to us?" The Calaris was silent for a moment, its glowing eyes flickering as if considering the question. Then, in a voice softer than before, it replied, "Because I can offer you a choice. I can share the knowledge we have gathered. You, too, can know the answers to all your questions. Every mystery solved, every secret revealed. But once you know, you cannot unknow." Rich felt the weight of the offer press down on him like a physical thing. The entire room seemed to hold its breath, waiting for his response. The idea of knowing everything, of having all the answers at his fingertips, was intoxicating. It was what every traveler who passed through the Galactic Tavern was searching for, wasn't it? Meaning, purpose, the answers to the big questions. But then he looked at the Calaris again. Its light was dimming, its voice hollow, lifeless. It had all the answers, and yet it was empty. It had found what it was looking for, and it had destroyed them. Rich glanced around the room. The smuggler had gone quiet, staring into his glass. The diplomats were pale, their usual composure shaken. The traders, too, looked less certain than before, their bravado stripped away by the weight of the conversation. They were all still searching, still chasing something. And in that search there was life, there was hope. Rich looked back at the Calaris, his decision made. "No thanks," he said quietly. "I think I'll stick with not knowing. It's the questions that keep life interesting." The Calaris blinked, its form flickering slightly. "You choose ignorance?" Rich shrugged, a small smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. "Maybe. Or maybe I'm choosing to keep living. What's the point of having all the answers if it means losing yourself along the way?" The Calaris was silent for a long moment, its glowing eyes fixed on Rich. Finally, it nodded, its light dimming further. "You are wiser than you know, Rich Covert," it said softly. "But remember, there is always a cost to knowledge, and sometimes that cost is your soul." With that, the Calaris turned and glided toward the door. The patrons watched in silence as it disappeared into the starry night beyond. The door hissed shut behind it, and slowly the hum of conversation returned to the tavern, though it was quieter, more subdued than before. Rich stood behind the bar, staring at the empty space where the alien had stood. He reached for a glass, filling it with a dark amber liquid, and raised it to the stars beyond the window. "Here's to not knowing," he murmured, before taking a slow sip. The night wore on, as it always did at the Galactic Tavern. The universe, with all its mysteries, continued to spin, and for now that was enough.
Thank you so much for joining us on this cosmic journey. If you enjoyed the ride, please hit that subscribe button and share the adventure with others. Your support means the world to us and helps us bring you even more incredible stories. Until next time, stay curious and keep exploring the stars.